Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a massive, completely untapped international trade frontier, Brazil and Bangladesh. Look, if you're an export-oriented business or maybe an importer hunting for that next big competitive edge, you are exactly where you need to be. We're looking way past the usual suspects like North America and Europe, and we are zeroing in on Latin America's absolute largest economy.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the untapped Brazilian market, break down the top 10 Brazilian industries ready for growth, look at the sourcing advantage, tackle how to actually overcome market challenges, and finally, map out your specific market entry roadmap. All right, part 1, the untapped Brazilian market. We've got to start by just wrapping our heads around the sheer macroeconomic scale of this commercial powerhouse. We're talking about a population of over 205 million people. It's heavily urbanized, it's got a massive manufacturing base, and it's driven by a seriously powerful consumer economy. To put their global trade footprint into perspective for you, their annual merchandise imports sit at a staggering $292.25 billion. Their appetite for imported goods is just enormous. And you know the momentum right now between these two nations? It's undeniable. In just one single year, from the 23-24 to the 24-25 fiscal year, Bangladeshi exports to Brazil jumped from $147 million to $187 million. That's a 26% increase. So the trade volume is absolutely growing, but honestly, it's still just a drop in the bucket compared to what Brazil is buying from the rest of the world.
Now here is where things get really interesting, because there is a massive market imbalance right now. A full 90% of Bangladesh's current exports to Brazil, it's literally just knitwear and woven garments. 90%. That leaves this huge, diverse market almost entirely untouched. Right now, only tiny little fractions are made up of things like raw jute, footwear, and home textiles. So you're probably wondering, where exactly is the rest of the opportunity?
Well, that brings us to part 2, the top 10 Brazilian industries. Let's map out the specific sectors that are desperately hungry for Bangladeshi products right now. First up, let's look at consumer and fashion. Number 1 is apparel. Sure, it's already big, but exporters really need to realize that Brazil isn't just beaches and carnival, right? The cooler southern states actually create a huge demand for layered clothing and sweaters. Number 2 is footwear. Get this, in just the first half of 2026, Brazil imported almost 26 million pairs of shoes. Asian suppliers already dominate that space, which proves Brazilian buyers are totally comfortable sourcing from Asia. Third, we have home textiles. Brazil has a massive hotel and hospitality sector, but it is heavily underdeveloped for Bangladeshi cotton products. We're talking current exports of a mere $800,000. That is wild. And fourth is leather goods and travel accessories. Things like customized corporate gifting and private label retail, that market is wide open for competitive suppliers.
Okay, moving over to the B2B and industrial side, the opportunities get super specific. Number 5 is pharmaceuticals. There's a huge demand for affordable generic medicines there, though, full disclosure, you will have to navigate some pretty strict health regulations. Number 6 is an absolute goldmine, sustainable packaging. Remember, Brazil is an agricultural giant. They need massive quantities of jute sacks for their coffee, cocoa, and grains. Number 7 is construction and ceramics. Think hotel crockery and sanitary ware. 8 is food processing, specifically shelf-stable, ethnic, and specialty foods. Number 9, light engineering. Competitively priced bicycles are actually a perfect fit for Brazil's booming urban delivery economy right now. And rounding out the top 10, IT and digital services. This is a game changer because it allows Bangladeshi tech firms to enter the market without any physical freight costs at all, assuming, of course, they can overcome the language barrier. Which leads us to part 3. The sourcing advantage. Because the million-dollar question is, why would a Brazilian importer look all the way across the globe to Bangladesh instead of sticking with their usual suppliers? Really, it all comes down to diversification and capability. Instead of being overly dependent on just one or two traditional Asian markets, Bangladesh brings a lot to the table. We're talking decades of private label experience, massive scale, and crucially, a rapidly rising standard of environmentally responsible green manufacturing. And let me tell you, that sustainability factor is becoming absolutely essential for Brazilian brands that are catering to eco-conscious consumers. All right, part 4, overcoming market challenges. As much as we love the potential here, we do have to ground this excitement with a quick reality check.
Operating in Latin America's biggest economy means there are real hurdles to clear, and preparation is everything. First off, there's no free trade agreement, so standard tariffs are going to apply.
Second, Portuguese language localization is an absolute must. Catalogs and packaging that are just in English? Yeah, that simply won't cut it. Third, you've got complex import procedures, especially dealing with agencies like Anvisa for healthcare stuff. Fourth is the long logistics route, which really requires careful inventory planning. Fifth is the need for product adaptation, like making sure you're using metric sizing. And finally, number 6, just a general lack of buyer information. If you're thinking about just mass emailing Brazilian companies, actually scratch that. Don't do it. It rarely works. But hey, the good news is you do not have to navigate those hurdles alone. Organizations like the Brazil-Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the BBCCI, exists precisely to bridge this gap. They're there to help businesses conduct proper due diligence, untangle all those tricky import procedures, and honestly, most importantly, find verified buyers through real business matchmaking and trade delegations. They basically act as your local representation to maintain that incredibly vital continuous communication on the ground. So let's bring it all together in Part 5, your market entry roadmap. Let's take all this data and turn it into actionable steps for your business.
Here is your disciplined 6-step roadmap to get started. First, you need to analyze your product's actual viability in the market. Second, adapt it. Translate your specs into Portuguese and adjust for local tastes. Third, and please, this is critical, calculate your landed cost. Do not just pitch your factory price. You have to factor in those long-distance freight charges, port fees, and taxes so the buyer actually knows their true cost. Fourth, verify your buyers using proper due diligence. No skipping steps here. Fifth, test the waters with some pilot orders just to make sure the logistics run smoothly. And sixth, cement a long-term local partnership. You really have to treat Brazil as a strategic long-term market, not just a quick dumping ground for surplus inventory.
International trade specialist M.D. Joynal Abdin summarized this macroeconomic reality perfectly. He noted that Brazil's demand for imported goods is measured in the hundreds of billions of dollars, while Bangladesh's annual exports to Brazil still sit below 200 million. Think about that gap. That enormous difference perfectly illustrates the sheer scale of the unrealized opportunity here, provided you're willing to put in the strategic work.
The trade momentum between these two countries is already growing at 26% a year. The blueprint is right there in front of us, and the Brazilian market is eagerly, actively looking for diversification. So the only question left for you is this. Out of those 10 booming Brazilian industries, which one is your business going to target and disrupt first? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy strategizing.